defensive people outside of how big your special teams have been. I'm curious if you could give us a brief timeline of your approach to analytics generally, the head coach, and when they became a driving factor in shaping the decision.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily say it's been a driving factor in decision making, but I think all these analytics companies have done a really good job of being able to put some metrics on some things that maybe in the past it was more of a gut feeling, and now you can really go and check where you're at. So we started this at the previous institution. Mike Hazel, our director of football operations, he's a real inquisitive guy, and he likes these types of things. So he'd kind of done some searches. We brought some different companies in the off season and kind of interviewed them, and talked to some friends within the industry, and saw got some input about what they thought was the best. And then for us, it's just another piece of information. It's watching film. It's what you see at practice every single day. It's your own studies that you run, down and distance and tendencies and things like that. And then it may just be something you're curious about. It also affects hires for us. We use it in hires when I'm looking at bringing a guy in. You can check everything now. You can check, if you're hiring an offensive line coach, you can check how many tackles for loss, how many sacks, how many, the percentage of successful plays. You can really get whatever you want. It really comes down to your imagination and your creativity of what you're looking for and what you need and what you factor to be important for you, each position. So it's just another piece of information that you use. So we like it, we value it, but we're not one of these people that are going to follow it to the T, because if you go with those people, you're supposed to go for it every single time on 4th and 1, whether you're on your own -8 or the +8. And if it doesn't work out, it's not like I can come in and say, well, the analytics company said it was the right decision. People aren't going to want to hear that.
James, you're in the Big Ten championship game, yet you only have one position player who's first team all Big Ten. What do you make of that?
I just think we're playing well as a team. We're playing really good complementary football. I don't know if there's one thing that really jumps out at you. I know the offense is getting a lot of attention right now. I looked at practice. I was helping the scout offense with the defense, and all the cameras were down with the sexy offense, which is awesome. But I think our defense is playing really well. I think our offense is playing really well. I think our special teams are playing well. We probably don't have one thing or one person. Last year, Carl Nassib leads the nation in sacks. We may not have that, but if you look on defense, our D-line is playing well. Our linebackers are playing well. Our secondary is playing well. You look on offense, our O-line's playing well. You can say about each position, and maybe we don't have one position that's dominant or one player that's overly dominant, but we're just playing really good complementary football. And I think we're playing disciplined football. We're not making a whole lot of mistakes when it comes to penalties and turnovers and things like that. So I think that's probably why. And I think probably the style of offense that we play as well, because we're spreading the ball around to so many different people, which I also think makes us difficult to defend.
James, I want to ask you about your
and I'm sorry. And then one last thing is we're young. I think that's the other thing. I think you guys know sometimes guys make first team or second team. A lot of it's based on the hype coming into the season. Now, you still got to back it up once the season starts, but people are already, there's name recognition before the year even starts. So I think that's part of it, too. We're young, and a lot of these guys didn't have name recognition before the season started. Sorry.
It's fine. First off, congratulations on your Coach of the Year award.
As a staff, thank you.
Secondly, your offense through 12 games was 60% run, 40% pass. Is that about where you want it, or what are your thoughts on your offensive breakdown versus run versus passing? Do you think that you've achieved balance on offense?
Yeah, I think you guys have heard me say this before. We don't look at balance as 50-50. We look at balance as being able to run or pass in any given situation and be able to be effective at it. For us, with all the run-pass options we do, it really is truly dictated by the defense and what they do, running into the best looks or throwing into the best looks. I would not say that we're balanced yet because we're not good enough in short yardage situations. That's going to come with our offensive line continuing to mature as they have all season long. But I still think there's times in the low red zone or in short yardage runs where we do have the look that we want to run into and we hand it off and we're not getting enough push. So I think I think we're pretty balanced. but I wouldn't necessarily say we're as balanced as Joe would like to be, as I'd like to be, as our entire team would like to be. But I do think we're balanced from the standpoint we're going to take what the defense gives.
What things does Wisconsin do defensively that make them so good against the pass?
Yeah, to be honest with you, I think more than anything, it's it's what you guys kind of talked about in terms of star players or this or that. I just think they're really sound. They're coached really well. They're very rarely out of position. You don't see guys just running nude down the field, wide open. You don't see them out of their gaps. They're very gap sound. They do just enough, not too much. They do just enough to keep you honest, but they do, because they don't do a whole lot, it allows their guys to play fast and play aggressive. And I think they're well coached. They got great fundamentals and technique, and then they're talented. Obviously, you lead the nation in interceptions. I think 21 or whatever it is. They obviously have some talent as well. But I think it's like talk about. I know it's probably a boring answer, but I think they play complementary defense. I think they get interceptions because they have talent, but they also get interceptions because they're able to get pressure on the quarterback and those types of things. So
they're not an exotic defense, right? They play
I don't
pretty
think they're
potatoes,
exotic.
right?
Yeah, I wouldn't describe them as exotic. They're obviously they base out of a 3-down front, but they have the flexibility to kind of stem their front and go 4 down or 3 down. But I wouldn't describe them as exotic.
Do you think their defensive line is a little bit underrated? I mean, you just kind of mentioned that their interception numbers might be inflated with the way their team runs.
Yeah, I think that's always the case. I mean, the best the best friend of a defensive back is a defensive lineman that can rush the quarterback. I mean, you bring defensive linemen in on official visits. The DBs should be begging to host them and make sure they get a great trip because they're going to make their lives easier for the rest of their careers. So, yeah, I think whenever you lead the nation in interceptions, they're not doing it on their own. I think the linebackers are the strength. I think the secondary is pretty good too. I think the D-line is pretty good, but I think the linebackers are what make them go. Not just from a production standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint. They got some guys that have played a lot of football for them, been very productive.
You
Hey,
talked
James,
about
I saw you coaching up the scout team there. So what's the coach of the year like basketball coaching?
Coaching, when you become a head coach, depending on how you do it, you start dealing with a lot of other things, academics and issues off the field and administrative duties and things like that. So you have to be careful. You can get removed from it. I like being with the offense, for the majority of practice. But then what I try to do is when I'm with the offense, try to kind of give Joe some things, from a different perspective. I usually hit Joe in the morning with a few things, one-on-one, or I meet at night after everybody leaves. I'll mention something to him just from a big picture perspective. And I'll have weird things where I'll wake up in the middle of the night and I'll be thinking about something. I'll jot it down or send a text or something like that, just something that for whatever reason I've seen on film or just kind of hits home with me. And then, defensively, I kind of mark a few periods down, try to get 3 or 4 team periods at the end of practice with the defense. And the best thing I can do to help those guys is coach the scout team so we're getting good looks. You'd be surprised. A lot of times defensive coaches think the offense is trying to do one thing, and they're really not, and vice versa. And I think one of the cool things about being a head coach is you get to be able to sit in both rooms and kind of hear what they're saying, and a lot of times what they think the offense is trying to do isn't always accurate, and vice versa. And I think a lot of times you're giving those guys too much credit. You see coaches doing all kinds of stuff to, hide their signals or, disguise the look that they're trying to give. And you just have to be careful. There's a fine line to that because if you do too much of it, your kids aren't in position to play, or you spend too much time chasing ghosts that don't really exist. So I like the fact that you're able to bounce back and forth, and you'll learn a lot more big picture stuff about kind of what's going on, how it all fits together. So I like that.
You've been pretty good about taking the ball when you win the toss because you wanted to be aggressive and what have you. Is there added value in breaking that trend if you win it this weekend to try and get the ball to start the second half? And probably broader than that, your situational charts, you talked about not having to think things through, just sort of going, we're in this position, we do this. Does that change at all when the game is maybe different than just another regular season?
No, I think that's one of the things you have to be careful of is you get to this. It's like, I think I've said before, you're an assistant coach and you get to become a head coach, and then you you try to be something that you're not because now you're a head coach. Well, that's not what got you there. And I think it's the same thing, for these games, to go into this game and try to become something we're not in a week, or for me to handle the game, manage the game differently than we have all year long. That's not what's got us here. So, back to the analytics, I think Penn State is like 83 or 84%, successful in winning the game if we're leading at halftime. So that kind of has really factored into that decision of trying to do whatever we possibly can to score early and emphasize it in meetings and emphasize it in practice.
When you said about seeing the scout team, who are some of those guys that you've kind of seen throughout the course of the year that obviously we don't see them, but guys that are making strides behind the scenes?
Yeah, I guess a different way to answer that question is guys that have been really valuable. I mean, Irv Pays was a walk-on tryout running back who's really got great quickness, and he's an older guy. He tried out for the team like 2 or 3 times, but he's really helped us. Taking a guy like DeBoof and having him play tight end, because he's a little bit of an undersized offensive lineman, but having him play tight end to get a more physical blocker at the tight end position, for our scout team. I think the quarterback Schuster and Zembeck have done a nice job for us as well. So it's been good. I think you got older guys like Tom Devaney, who's been on the scout team for 4 years and takes a lot of pride in it, brings a lot of value. So there's a bunch of those guys. And I think we're in a good place right now that everybody on this team feels valued and feel like they have a role. They may not be happy with their role, or they may want a more significant role, but they feel like they're doing something to help this team, and they should be just as proud of what we've accomplished as Saquon Barkley. They have different roles, but they're still critical to our success.
Hey, Coach, there was a lot of preseason criticism kind of towards you from members of the national media. Now that your team's in the Big Ten title game, you have that Coach of the Year award. Is there any satisfaction on your end, kind of proving them wrong?
No. I'd like to talk about Wisconsin. I'd like to talk about Wisconsin. I'd like to talk about the team. I'd like to not talk about past negativity, because it'll come back. It'll be back again at some point. I'd like to just focus on Wisconsin and our kids and what we're doing, not stuff that happened in preseason.
Thanks, Coach.
I'll let,
So with the scout team, have you guys been using it for players to imitate Houston?
I'm sorry?
Have you guys been using different people on the scout team to imitate Houston?
Yeah, we don't really, it's not like we have enough bodies on scout team with different skill sets to say, you're going to do this or you're going to do that. I think I said to you guys before earlier in the season, if we had somebody that could, imitate one of those guys that well, they wouldn't be on scout team, most likely. So, we just trying to get the best look we possibly can. More than anything, it's not really matching talent for talent. It's trying to get them looks that they're going to see, shifts and motions, and it be clean the way it's going to happen, and pass routes and combinations that they're going to see to prepare them for the game, rather than trying to say we're going to match talent for talent. We're not really at that point yet.